It is amazing being in these studios because it's really silent whenever everybody's quiet. Such a focused environment.
At one point, also Agustino was engineering for us.
Yes.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sabine Price, and I'm delighted to chair this panel featuring 3 speakers altogether. And the first presentation is by Garth Payne and Celia Young, and I have a short bio for each of them. So, Garth.
But you should speak on the mic, otherwise audio.
All right. Good suggestion. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sabine Feist and the chair of this panel featuring 3 speakers altogether. And the first 2 are Garth Payne and Celia Young. And Garth Payne, composer, performer, researcher, and professor of digital sound, interactive media, and composition at ASU, was researcher artist in residence at IRCAM and ZKM, where he developed Future Perfect, a large-scale work for spatial audio, cell phones, and VR. He also presented the keynote at NIME 2016 and Ecomusicologies 2014, both talks centered on listening to plays. Garth Payne also co-directs the Acoustic Ecology Lab at Arizona State University, and his music has been performed internationally and won awards. The same is true for his articles. They're published in peer-reviewed journals around the globe. Celia Young, a tonmeister and sound artist, is currently a PhD student and research assistant in ASU's School of Arts, Media, and Engineering, and working at the intersection of acoustic ecology, immersive, ambisonic technologies, and community engagement under the tutelage of Garth Payne. Garth Payne and Celia Young are presenting on community environmental listening as a strategy to address climate change. Please welcome Garth Payne and Celia Young.
Thank you so much. It's a delight to be here, and I want to start by thanking the organisers for such a rich already day and a half or so of discussion, and so we're honoured to be able to contribute to that today. So we're going to talk about our project, which is to build a community environmental listening groups on a large scale. This project comes out of work of the Acoustic Ecology Lab at ASU, and this gives you a general overview of the range of projects that we've been pursuing there now for more than 10 years. And you'll see that at the very centre of that is listening. And the project Listening to the Power of N has been a project working with communities to listen to the same locations repeatedly over many years. And you can go to the ecolisten.org website and listen to most of those recordings, which are unedited and archived there. But we're going to focus today more directly in this corner of the activities of our lab, which is to think about the power of environmental listening to help build agency and stewardship in communities, and the way in which we can use that not only to build community empowerment, but as a creative practice. I was struck last year, in fact, listening to the Ezra Klein podcast, which is a New York Times podcast, when he said, and it's there in orange, and I quote, "We are not going to legislate quickly enough to stop climate change. That cannot be the only path. So then what options are left? What options do we have if politics fails?" And for me, this was blood chilling almost. I mean, I feel it right now, actually. You know, he's really asking us, okay, we look to the institutions are failing us, so what else? What else is there, right? And my own view is that, society has been too slow, too risk averse to move forward, too scared to upset others, to change the balance of power, the status quo, the very things that have led us to this place which is really to face a climate catastrophe. And so that is obviously, a harrowing thought, but it's something that I think we as a community actually have a lot to offer to help change that direction. We have been running a project called Ecosonics for quite a few years now. You'll see on a tree here a small Raspberry Pi based recorder, field recorder, and recording in the same location across a 10-mile transect for a couple of years now, or quite a few. And we've been analysing this data and building a computer model that maps the psychoacoustic properties of those recordings to weather data at those locations. And a couple of years ago, we published this poster of initial results. And what stunned me was that the correlations between some of these characteristics and the psychoacoustic properties were extremely strong. They were so strong, in fact, that we could reverse the model and play sound from that day into the model and get the weather forecast for the day. And if we did that in previous dates, we could check to see if that was real. So the results show here that there's an extremely positive statistical significance relationship between acoustic diversity measure, that is a measure that we've developed to look at the number of distinct streams within a single signal, a measure of diversity, if you like, within that environment, and cloud cover, wind speed and temperature, and an inverse statistically significant relationship between acoustic diversity and dew point and visibility. Now, what this told me when we got this data was that it's true, the very things that we hear, which is that sound of our environments change distinctly with changes in the weather, is true, and it's measurable. So if we extend that out over periods of time, climate change is essentially just an extended change in the weather, right? It's a pattern of change. Then we can say quite clearly that the sound of our environments will and is changing with the impact of climate change. So if we think about sound as fundamentally ecosystemic, I like to think about the Buddhist notion of dependent arising, where everything is essentially interdependent. Nothing exists in isolation from everything else that's there, right? And in fact, this Agostino's talk was beautifully illustrated this morning, and this idea that everything is essentially affecting everything else when we come to the sonic domain. So if we think about that, and we know and we've proven for ourselves that changes in weather substantially change the sound quality of environments, and we've been looking already at changes in Joshua Tree National Park, where we're hypothesizing that animals will actually move habitats because the acoustic properties actually affect the way that they can find prey or breed and so on. So the habitat becomes unfavourable because of a transformation of acoustic properties, not for all the other reasons we would think about, lack of food or heat or whatever, but the change of acoustic properties. And this is, in my view, a really critical point that is not being discussed generally in terms of climate impact. But nevertheless, so when we think about this, then we can think about, and in our experience through the EcoListen project, that repeated listenings over periods of time, many years, do form really strong relational bonds to those places that our volunteers have been listening to. And that they do then feel a very strong sense of stewardship for that land and a sense of agency. And it's, I think, strongly argued by some that we all need to become Indigenous, meaning that we all need to live on the land we live on, like not just use it, but live on it. And so this is our objective, is to find a way to help people live in the environments in which they live, and our objective is to have 1 billion people listening to their environments by 2030. So then, and we say that, I know that sounds completely ridiculous, but we say that because we think that's the scale at which we need to encourage and support change, right? It needs to be really at scale. So hence comes our Community Environmental Listening Groups project. So we know that listening to our environments is really an existential act. It brings us to the here and the now in a way that almost nothing else in our society does. You can only listen now, and you can only listen to here, right? I'm talking in the environmental listening context. So it's a really unique experience of being present, truly present in the places in which we reside. And it's in some senses, I would argue, even more centering than many meditation practices that are reflecting upon, say, the breath or some other aspect of the body function, because it's really listening to the very context in which we live and survive and feeds us, etc. So then, through practicing and teaching a number of listening modes over the last years in community groups and to my students and so on, as I said, I've really found that this has facilitated a level of environmental awareness and agency and stewardship that has persisted in their daily practice and has made a big difference to them. So we envisage a future where the broad community embraces presence on the land in which they live, and thus understand and foster a balanced ecosystem. Our mission then is to provide tools, training and resources to build community-based environmental listeners in support of a sustainable planet. I love this sign in Athens, which points to the fact that environmental protection relies on a citizen's culture. And to some extent, this idea has obviously been present in other cultures of listening, whether we talk about deep listening communities and other communities. Where that has not, what we're trying to do is to take some of those ideas, expand those ideas, but put them in an easily distributable form that can be taken up by community broadly and is not a kind of niche practice, if you like, becomes a really common practice. So what we're doing is to set up so that change, therefore, as I've said, must be led by all of us, not just the institutions. And so what we're looking to do is to assist us all to build awareness of the environments in which we live, to explore the environment through sound, to be much more connected to that environment, and to expand our sensibilities towards it. And many times already in this conference, I've heard people talking about how when they start to listen, they don't hear much, but, half an hour later, they hear incredible detail in the landscape. And I've seen in my own students who practice these modes of listening regularly, that they'll tell me by the end of the semester that their listening, their engagement with their environment has profoundly changed, that it's obviously a learnable skill, right, a trainable skill. We need to then, through this awareness of our environments, become more local and become part and understand that we are part of the ecosystem, that we are in fact one of the species and that we should be listening to our interaction with other species. And it helps us become more grounded and more present, which hopefully would lead to better decision making in general. So how are we going to do this? How do we propose that we have this kind of mass uptake of environmental listening? So it's clearly upon us to facilitate that. And as I said before, we wish for this to be really at scale, nationally and internationally. So we've developed a guidebook or field guide for environmental listening. I have a kind of what I hope is a final draft without any of the images or stuff here. You're welcome to look at this afterwards if you would like to. But we will be, hopefully by the end of the year, publishing an environmental listening field guide, which contains within it all of the instructions about modes of listening, how to form community listening groups, lots of references for people to follow up in, exercises to do, and so on. So a tool that anybody can take forth into their community and build environmental listening groups using that tool. We're fostering, therefore, community groups. We think that this is not something that we should drive, but that we should seed into the community and support in the community. And that will also be supported through podcasts, newsletters, a web portal, and so on. Now, one of the challenges then is, like, lots of people, of course, have started projects with great ambition and not managed to reach that public. So the question is, well, how do we reach the public? And so to address that, we have built community partnerships already through the university library with the National Library Network. And of course, libraries are embedded in communities. There are already trusted resources in those communities. They run everything from fab labs to, reading groups to multicultural events and so on. So they're a really wonderful place where the community already gathers, and it's already a focus for that community. So we're kind of conceptualizing then, in partnership with the library, these kind of sensory embodied experiences. We've been starting to go out and train the trainer workshops to get people, trained in the listening modes that we'll talk about, and then to provide this resource soon. In addition, with the library at the university, and we hope that this might extend, but on a more limited approach, we have a kind of threefold approach there. Which is that I also developed some years ago environmental VR in national parks in the US, so that people could put the VR on and be in the national park, as it were, right? And so we've taken these into nursing homes, hospitals, schools, and also seen great enthusiasm for the experience of being in those places. So we'll have a series of headsets available within the library, and we're also, in fact, Celia's just finished composing an hour-long work from recordings that we made in Costa Rica, and we're building an ambisonic environment, a large room in the library that'll have bean bags and so on in it, so that students can come and just kind of do their work in a rainforest environment sonically, and so their listening practices are reinforced by these other resources that are available to them. It's not just a once weekly communal gathering. So I think at this point I need to hand over to you, do I?
Yeah, that was.
And so to talk more about the tools, I'm going to hand over to Celia, whose PhD is in our lab and focused with me on developing this project. So Celia.
Yeah. Bon pomeriggio, good afternoon, and welcome to the second part of our presentation on community environmental listening as a strategy to address climate change. And before I go into the details of what we have been doing with the library network, I would like to stress the importance why environmental listening is so important for our project, because we believe it's an opportunity to stop for a few moments and we can focus our attention on the sounds of our environment. And environmental sounds forms a unique signature, which also known as a sonic niche, of all the species that live in that ecosystem. We all share and communicate with each other. That's using sound. In other words, it gives us an indication of the inhabitants of the environment, and also over time, an indication of changes in the environment and the health of the environment. And the guidebook that we've been delivering is really helpful for practicing environmental listening, which allows us to become more aware and embedded in the ecosystem in which we live in. Whether we're being remoted from the natural environments or you're located in a rural or urban cities, They contain a unique sonic signature that communicates something about a place and belonging. So to help us reach out to a wider network, we develop a relationship with the ASU library, and our library will deploy, as sort of Payne was mentioning, acoustic ecology VR, which embedded environmental listening experience on those headsets in our collections, and make those headsets available for checkout to students and experience environmental listening in these pristine natural environments within the library. And they will also promote this opportunity through various channels, including health and well-being. And through the library, we'll provide librarians to manage regular sound walks on the ASU campus, and also manage and promote an ASU environmental listening groups, and propose regular workshop on training the listening modes. We also make dedicated areas in the library where we will facilitate loudspeakers and set up to create an environmental listening experience and space in which students maybe work in silence or simply hang out in beanbags to experience those health benefits. And you might be wondering, like, then how do I have access to those facilities, right? Because we must be away from the actual space. And to help people create those individual experience, we developed the field guide, which provide you a simple toolkit that everyone can use to have a broader public impact. And we're hoping to have the guidebook ready by the end of the year. And are we on the future of the climate change? So like to address the issue of the climate change, it will bring more complex responsibility for everyone, but therefore also new opportunity to bring our sensibility and competence into regenerative system sustainability in the contribution to acoustic ecology. We wish to create outreach and a discussion that can connect to other work in the acoustic ecology. And we want to bring a sonic relational competence to the current crisis of climate, health, and social impact. And also, we also want to open the conversation of listening to possibilities, to create and implement new transferable toolkits and skills for pedagogical practice. These sonic skills, which we embedded in the field guide, will practice 3 different listening modes. And this will provide sensory responsive and embodied learning method that aims to enable learners to engage with their cultural, social, and political surroundings. And sounding and listening as a form of activism and interference can break through these partitions to hear possibilities and resistance to them, and to make proposition about how else we could work together as a community, and how else knowledge could be produced. To help people offer new opportunity for new thinker and cross-disciplinary collaboration, and hopefully other ways to see the films given to us by academic infrastructure and expectations. And we hope people will develop placemaking, becoming more connected to the place that we live in, and also feel the urge to look after the environment and ecosystem that we're situated, and also feel like that they have the power to do something about it, to promote stewardship and agency in this case. And also, we have the questions of like, what is the role of sound in defining cultural identities, right? And how does sound impact our relationship with the environment? And how can we preserve and design healthier acoustic environments? Because the problem we face with climate change are global, and it will require more thinking about the problems, much more than the thinking about the problems. But at the very least, we do need a vast change in how we interpret ourselves in relation to the earth and to natural environments, because our home is to be cherished as it is, and not simply as a repository for resources that we can extract. As earlier, we are not extracting information from the sound sources. We are here to reconstruct and reimagine and we are not supposed to like catalog and convert the resources into fuels or unsustainable homes or weapons. And as a PhD student, many collaborative endeavors has inspired me to continue exploring the multifaceted connections between sounds and well-being, and how acoustic design can enhance our lives and contribute to creating a more harmonious and sustainable sonic environment for future generations. We are open to some questions for now, and if you have any comments you wish to share, we're happy to address.
I'll just summarize. Thank you, Celia. So in summary, last year we needed to reduce our collective carbon emissions by 7%, and we did not do that. So wide action is required. Climate change is, as we've said, a really important international crisis. And what we have in the guidebook then are a method teaching 3 listening modes. It's passive listening, active listening, and directed listening. As we said, this is a kind of throwback, if you like, to the 1970s idea of think globally, act locally. And to really seek a way of embedding listening as a fundamental tool in empowering individuals to re-engage with their local environments. The field guide will be published by the end of this year and will be available, freely available. And then we're hoping to expand our ability to come out and support initial train the trainer workshops in order to seed those things within the community. As I said, our objective is to have 1 billion people listening to their environment by 2030, because we really believe that listening to the sounds of the world and learning through the experience of listening to our environments has a profound impact on the way in which we address the environments in which we live, the way in which we build community, and our contributions to positive environmental outcomes. Thank you so much.
Time for a couple of questions.
Oh, do you need this?
Thank you very much. Really interesting work. So if you aim to reach 1 billion people, I'm assuming you need to go beyond the border of the United States and the quote-unquote Western world. So I'm just curious, which challenges do you foresee in terms of like adapting this culturally and socially for other cultures around the world? Thanks.
Thank you. That's a very good question. So we set an objective, which we know will have many challenges. At the core of the method that we're proposing are these 3 practices: passive, active, and directed listening. I imagine that within other cultures, having have done some work with Indigenous cultures, that would be expanded and reinterpreted in a variety of ways. But what we've tried to do is to boil this down to a very simple method, something that anybody can do of any socioeconomic group at any time that they choose to do that. So it's not something that has a cost other than becoming a member, part of a community group. And so we think that the way we've tried to form that offering will limit some of the limitations that we might come up against. But your point about cultural appropriateness or so on is taken on board, and I don't really have an answer to that at this point.
So just as a follow-up question, if we consider time as a currency, I'm just curious, what about for working class And people, for example, in Asia and Africa who don't necessarily have time to be part of a community group, like how will you include those people?
Do you want to address that?
Sure.
Oh, you have a
Yeah, like especially like coming from the Asian culture, I believe that that's why we're approaching through the library network. We believe that through the educational system, it creates more opportunity to reach out to a wider audience and to promote this idea that to share this knowledge with people from different ages, especially younger kids. We can facilitate this needs to start at their earlier education, and also these days especially in Asia, we see an urge in early education. So people really seeking for the information and like educational change and innovation system in the education to help them to find out a way to structure those classes and lecture for younger kids, because people have already built up the infrastructure in the financial and then economics, and then now they are looking for opportunities and resources to help their kids to have like a more successful life, or in a way like a more fulfilled meaning in their life. So I see this as an opportunity, and we're also working on translating the field guide into different language, because I also speak other language as well, and we'll make efforts to look for the opportunity to break the language barrier, and hopefully this will also promote the ideas that people could open their mind. And also if you just keep creating opportunities and people attend the workshop, although it only happens like, although they only attend maybe like 2 times per week, but if they keep coming, or if they telling their friends, sharing the experience, so there might be chances that people are aware. So we're trying to build and develop the awareness, so that we believe that as time passes by, it could become like a creative, or like will develop that social impact in the end. Yeah.
One more question or comment?
Thanks. In an era where so many worthwhile projects are funded by people with a very directed interest, like oil companies funding very particular directed, environment projects, how is your project going to be funded? Because obviously it sounds very expensive.
The initial parts of the project have been funded through the Julianne Wrigley Futures Laboratory, which is the sustainability laboratory at ASU, as one of the approaches to help address climate impact. In our discussions with the library network, they're keen to take this up and offer it through libraries, and their resources would cover the delivery of these programs. So it's not something that we're out looking for huge sums of money to support. We really want it to be embedded in the community rather than overlaid, if you like, on the community. And I think that means that we need to burn less resources to put the project out in the community and to support the community than we might otherwise have to do. So it really needs to come out of the community, out of the library networks, out of the educational networks, and not be kind of funded as another layer on top of all of that. Yeah. All right, thank you. And just as a final note, Celia's email is here, as is mine. If you'd like to be in touch, if you'd like a copy of the field guide, etc., then please email us. We're keeping a list. As I said, I have a draft here that's not yet got images and graphics and laid up properly, but the content is here, so if you'd like to have a look at that, I'm happy to share. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I have to set up my laptop.
That's all right.
Can you see?
Perfect. A miracle. All right. I'm delighted to introduce you to our next speaker, Csaba Hainoci. He is a researcher, Hungarian researcher, musician, assistant professor at Moholy Nagy University of Art and Design in Budapest. His research interests include sound studies, sonic ecology, sound design, history of music. He initiated and co-founded the Central European Network for Sonic Ecology in 2018. And among his publications are Soundscape Composition in Hungary, concluding on studies on steam engines by Lalo Sari. This appeared in Unheard Landscapes, a volume that came out of FKL. And today he's talking about, what is your the title of your talk?
It is the possible roles of sound ecology in the development strategy of Szigetköz region, Hungary.
Thank you so much, and please welcome Csaba Hainoci.
Thank you so much for having me here. So, the Szigetköz region lies in the northwestern corner of Hungary, and it is the biggest inland river delta in Europe. Moreover, it has been severely damaged by the construction of the so-called Gabčíkovo-Nagymaros dam system during the 1980s and early 90s. In the second half of the 80s, the construction projects led in Hungary to an increasingly widespread civil resistance, which resulted in illegal mass demonstrations, actually.
The signal got lost.
You have it now? Yeah. You can see a crowd before the Hungarian parliament. It was in '88. So the anti-dam movement became an important element of the political opposition's activism in the period of the regime change. As a result, the Hungarian government stopped the construction, and not much later, Hungary terminated the contract with the still Czechoslovak side. Meanwhile, Slovakia was founded, and the Slovaks diverted 83% of the water of the Danube into an artificial channel built on Slovak territory. Very complicated situation because the river was the state border of the two countries. Anyway, the legality of the act was never clarified. The two countries went to the International Court of Justice in The Hague, which finally condemned both parties in 1997 and ordered them to settle the situation with bilateral treaties. This has never happened. The environmental rehabilitation of the region has been on agenda for decades. The last and unfortunately I can't say recent project, Insula Magna Sustainable Development Research Program was initiated by the Hungarian state via Ministry of Innovation and Technology, supported by the European Union. It was started in 2021, and the aim of the project was to develop a long-term and multifaceted concept that would enable the Szigetköz region to become a sustainable development area by European standards. Emphasizing European standards is always a very important buzzword in the eastern part of the European Union. It wanted to bring together conflicting spheres such as economy, ecology, and tourism. And this was the first time that sound ecology has been presented as a part of a comprehensive research project in my country. My recent paper is based on my report following the research. I will start with describing the region as a soundscape, and after that I will propose research and action lines. So I will go through all the elements. My experiential material came from sounds. I came from my sound walks using microphones, hydrophones, recorders, headphones as normal. And I also conducted 6 field interviews with local people, chosen local people, each of them 1 to 2 hours of length. Thirdly, there was a questionnaire prepared for the whole project with 74 items, including some questions for the sound. And this questionnaire was answered by more than 1,200 people. And in addition to these, I have included a row of secondary information which I didn't experience on spot but can be known. Firstly, many characteristic sounds are seasonal, either by diurnal or annual rhythms. And secondly, the soundscape also includes microsounds and ultra and infrasounds, which are, of course, inaudible without special gear. And I didn't have, during the research, I didn't have anything to listen to these, but I included the things hoped from these researches. Okay, some description. We can assume that geophony in the area is not extreme or not particularly rich. Sounds of water are typical. They range from gentle splashing to the sounds of rare floodings, which are much noisier, of course. About the sounds of wind, the richest impression is wind-triggered sounds from vegetation, especially reed beds and aspen groves are transmitting the sounds of wind. And God's sake, for God's sake, there are no signs of volcanic activities. As far as stones are concerned, the sliding drift of alluvial gravel in the riverbed can be characteristic, I mean the amount of it can be characteristic for the quantity of water and the conditions. About biophony, I will start with domestic animals. Backyard animal farming used to flourish in the area, but now, as they say, there is nothing. There is everything but little compared to 20, 30 years ago. Species are ranging from poultry to cattle, pig, horse, goats, sheep, donkey, and dog barking is still a significant soundscape element in the area. Let's switch to wild animals. Only a small proportion of arthropods and insects is audible to the naked ear. Chirping of crickets and grasshoppers is a typical keynote. Less obvious are quieter and microsounds, which require amplification. For instance, the stag beetle communicates vocally as early as the larva state, and males are in the beetle state. They are observed to buzz in groups while mating. I take it as evidence that fish sounds are part of the soundscape. Detecting them requires technology which has not yet been used in Hungary. The fish stocks of the Szigetkos have been hit hard by the building of the dam. Numerous studies have dealt with the consequences. I will come back to it a little bit later. Frog population has declined significantly in recent decades, but this is hardly documented and not mentioned in the questionnaires. Newts and turtles are also on the declining trend with their microsounds. The most obvious element of the Szigetkos soundscape is the sound of birds. There are about 230 species of birds around, including a long list of songbirds. And the down chorus of birds in April and May is one of the wonders of the region. The outstanding contribution of large mammals is the sound, or in the soundscape, is the bell deer, which just happened a few weeks ago. It's the end of August and September. The alarming cries of the roe deer are typical, also of the fox, as is the ruff. The fox's ruff. Do you know the fox's ruff? It's a mating sound. You can hear it in December. It's a coughing horse, like I can't really imitate, but if you hear it, you will never forget it. Beavers make a variety of sounds, including splashes, which is an alarming sound of the beaver, and they have also kind of chatting, speech sounds, which are more of microsounds. And there are a number of other small mammals like nutria, muskrats, ermine, various rabbits, hares. Their sounds belong to they can be perceived by persistent contemplative observers. Let's switch to anthropophony. The results of the public investigations in the area are mostly about complaints. The list of disturbance is dominated by the traffic noise, completed with lawnmowers, saws, and the like. During the canoeing season between May and September, there is a constant flow of cars on the routes, and water transport and motorboats are also accused. Another issue is off-road motorcycling. Compared with nearby Slovakia and Austria, the regulations are in Hungary more loose, and the controls are much more permissive. As a result, you can meet groups of 4, 5, or even many more really loud vehicles in protected areas. The underwater soundscape, for instance, at Dunakiliti settlement, is burdened by the dam itself, and above the water, industrial noises are clearly audible. And a further source of noise is hunting, which is regular occurrence throughout the year. Another big group of complaints are social sounds, combined with electronic music players. Loud music is often associated with foreigners, immigrants, or outspokenly Slovak immigrants, because in several villages of the area, it is on the border with Slovakia, and Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia, is just maybe 20 kilometers away. So in some villages there are big newly built Slovakian neighborhoods with people coming from Slovakia who enjoyed the cheaper housing conditions of Hungary. So that's how the soundscape would be characterized. And let's switch to oh no. Anyway, so I'm switching to proposed research and action lines. Overall, I believe that sound can contribute to sustainable regeneration of the area in four ways. First, as a tool for monitoring ecological processes. Secondly, as a natural asset to be preserved and enhanced. Thirdly, as a source of inspiration and material for site-specific artistic works related to the region. And finally, the potential for reducing and filtering disturbing sounds should also be considered. Not all of the interdisciplines dealing with the relationship between environment and sound are art or aesthetics based. Ecoacoustics, bioacoustics build on the perception of sound from the natural science perspective. I guess many here know well Amo Farina's researches about monitoring, and he says, monitoring makes possible to collect data which can be aimed at species diversity, the numbers of individuals, behavioral dynamics, and a long list of other factors. The main question in the Szigetköz is what to monitor. This region is a part of many habitats included in the Europe-wide Natura 2000 network. An important element of this European network is the identification of those habitats where the presence of species of special concern, for instance, endangerment or vulnerability, is important. Our region has a wide range of such species from invertebrates to mammals. For some reason, some of my slides have disappeared, but I can list the arthropods which are on this list, which are the great spotted firefly, the forest dragonfly, the marsh dragonfly, the stag beetle, which was just mentioned, and also the hermit beetle. Many studies have addressed the consequences of traumatic shock to fish populations. These are the endangered fish species. Extinction is observed in tributaries of the Danube, or better say ex-tributaries, which are completely separated now from the floodplain. Rare species and species of all European concern have already disappeared from the Szigetköz area. In some places of the region, frog choirs are clearly audible still, but they are hardly ever mentioned in the public questionnaire. They are not regarded as typical sounds for the region. This is in line with the interviews which say that the frog population has declined significantly in recent decades. The same for newts and the turtle populations. Bird life. My birds have disappeared. This is really a mystery. Anyway, there was one more slide with listing the endangered. I just checked it before sitting down, and I have to check my computer maybe. Anyway, the bird life in the area is still rich, but if you recall the species highlighted by Natura 2000, the picture is less idyllic. There are about 10 species which are endangered, and according to interviews, for instance, the pheasants, which are very common in Middle Europe, have almost disappeared from the area, and the little bittern and the coot, which are also quite typical birds, they are on the declining trend in the region. And the mammals, for some reason I still have the mammals. The bats, the bats ultrasounds are a separate category, and there are a few more. The call of the tundra vole, which is it's a tiny little kind of a vole. It lives a very highly secretive life. You can't you can't really see them. It's inaudible in the wild, but the screech of the otter is quite typical if you meet an otter. So these are the species of animals which could be monitored in the area, and no, I'm sorry, it doesn't work anymore, so I just my slides have disappeared. But anyway, I'm going to go to my second point, which is the sound as natural asset. The sounds of nature are to be preserved and shared, and the overall objective is to include the natural soundscape of the region among the values to be preserved and promoted. There is a national park in the area where they don't care about sound at all. This gesture to deal with the sound is a systematic practice in many national parks around the world. How can this be achieved? Firstly, it is quite important personal and on-spot experience on the ground in real time and space. The core word would be new tourism. It is a way of spending meaningful time in nature. A higher level of this is what just you were speaking about not long ago. Anyway, the main target for new tourism would be small groups, including families, and contemplation and discovery are the buzzwords. This is not really common for tourism in Hungary, but this is a way to develop. But on the other hand, documentation is also essential. Personal visit is time-bound and does not reflect the cyclical nature of the soundscape, nor the content of the soundscape. The void can be filled by creating, developing, and maintaining a sound archive. And over time, the successive sound recordings provide an auditory history of ecological change, as for instance, Bernie Krause reports. My third point of the ways how sound can contribute is sound in artistic works. The Szigetkőz region is a great field for ecologically motivated sound art. Residencies, events, campaigns would belong to this part of the project. Additionally, in the virtual space, I propose a sonic interactive, so to say, playground of collective recordings and a collective compositional or even improvisational use. And a few words about reducing disturbing sounds. Environmental awareness plays a major role in the sustainability of the area. The preservation of the soundscape must override the hedonistic implications of tourism. Consumer electronics offer a range of devices, such as high-powered Bluetooth devices, speakers, whose use runs counter to ecological objectives, and the natural sound environment is a value to be protected. And I came to conclusion. Since late 2022, it seems that the very optimistic Insula Magna as a research program has ended up. The current silence for now almost a year suggests that the Hungarian state has left it. In the recent economic crisis, they won't finance it anymore. From my point, I decided not to give up the project. Acoustic ecology has recently entered the syllabus of Moholy Nagy University of Art and Design. In the last academic year, the course Sound Ecology of the Szigetkőz took place. We found a local partner, an association, who deal both with nature preservation and tourism. Recently, they are opening an ecological experience center in a local village. In cooperation between them and our university, we organized the Szigetkőz Sound Garden event in June. A sound garden is a kind of a sanctuary of silence, free of dominant anthropophonic sounds, suitable for immersion and a good occasion to show the artistic and social aspects of sonic ecology. We did a lot during these 2 days, and for instance, we did a canoe soundscape walk for 3 hours with hydrophones and recorders and headphones. I think it was a good start, and we have plans for the future. Well, the final question is, what should get into the fore? Economic interests enhancing mass tourism, or the values of nature, human cognition and respect? Will this area become a fun fair of thousands of well-paid workers from neighboring towns? For instance, the car factories in the city of Győr, which is only 50 kilometers away, and which seeks such possibility? Or will the area focus on sustainable natural values and their preservation via regulated quality tourism? Perhaps not with the exclusive rigor of the Galapagos Islands, but with the same informed, committed consistency. I would go for this. Thank you for listening to this last paper for today. And I'm ready for your questions. Actually, I have a question to Garth. And to others, maybe. It's about sound archives, because I guess you must have a lot of recordings from over all the years. And my question is, do you have an archive, and is it public? What is your policy to deal with the sound, or maybe audiovisual archive? Just to learn from it.
I'm supposed to speak into the microphone. I have two answers. One is that for the EcoListen project, where we've been working with communities who are recording, many of those recordings are put online in the web page, and dated, and some metadata are associated with equipment, and anybody can go and listen to those. And it's nice sometimes colleagues will tell me that they just play them in the background in their office because it makes their office a nicer place. In my personal collection, I have many hard drives with files on them, and I have no idea where most things are. So that's terrible. I just am constantly involved in projects where I am out recording. And maybe they have a year on them, and sometimes they have a site on them. But yeah, I'm very bad at documenting them all and keeping them archived.
Are your recordings addressed to the soundscape in general? Yeah, just to be.
We can swap.
Are your recordings dedicated to the soundscape as such, as a holistic thing, or are you going for species or special phenomena?
I'm always interested in recording the entire soundscape, and whatever animals or species may be soloists in the moment is for me just part of the ecosystem. So I'm always interested in listening to the ecosystem or to the acoustic ecology as a whole, rather than. So I'm always using ambisonic microphones or spatial forms of recording, double MS or something, rather than a shotgun microphone or a single point microphone.
Thank you, Garth. And anybody else experienced in this field of documenting and storing and publishing recordings? Okay, so anyway, it's your turn to ask.
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for introducing the Sorry, I can't say the names. The place where you... Sigetka, sorry. I didn't have my notes, so I couldn't remember the name. And also this Insula Magna project. So, I was just wondering, because it somehow got stuck now a bit, the project you said. So it's unclear where it is going. So, and you said a bit what your kind of wishes were for the future. So if you could imagine, I don't know, in 5 years or in 10 years, how it would look like, what would be your kind of dream for this area, or how should it sound like? So if you just have a vision for the future and not thinking about problems, political or financial, whatever. So what would be your kind of your dream to make like a nature park or whatever? So if you could just daydream a bit, I would be very interested about it.
Well, the project was initialized from the government, and it was nothing. So my feeling was that it will go in the wrong direction anyway, because all these big developments are in Hungary always about the money and making bigger money for those who already have the money. But this small community, not so small community actually, which is the Institute of Advanced Studies, Kőszeg. Kőszeg is a small town. So the results of the research were very environmental and very green, so to say, from all aspects. So I think that the government circles just didn't really like the output of the research. This is one thing, before I just answer my dreams. And the other side was that really there is a financial economic crisis now, so they just don't have, because of political reasons, the European Union stopped giving free money to the Hungarian government, and there is no money for the projects. I emphasize the importance of the Institute of Advanced Studies Kőszeg, because it was a holistic approach, not just for sound studies or environmental sound research and national park, but as planned, the project was about economy and tourism and arts and culture in general. And a few institutions were planned, like the Sigetka's Academy of Knowledge, which would be a very nice institution. It would need a lot of money, which nobody will invest now. So my idea is just I'm very happy that I found this association locally, and I'm happy that my university is supporting these efforts and these ambitions to be present there. And I would like really try out these 4 ways, what can be done. As I'm interested very much in monitoring. I have no experience. I'm just trying to learn, and it's not in Hungary. Nobody monitors by sound. Hungary is very good in bird watching, but not in bird monitoring. So I would just like to try out, and also these ROVs, which would underwater get these mobile recorders, which have cameras and hydrophones. This is I read that in America they use it, but I think in Europe in general it's very seldom that ROVs are used. If I could get access to listen to the sound of fishes, this would be one thing I would really like to go into. The other thing is to work for new tourism in a way, and this sound garden project it worked very well one time, and I think we can do it regularly. And we would like to work with local schools, with children. There was no time for it yet, but it has been started. There are a few schools in the region which are open to take their children, to give recorders and headphones to the children and work with them. And from the other side, the university is also interested in educational programs. So this is a path. And then the sound art path is I have doubts with sound art and ecology because I think it's two different things. But sound art can help ecology, and if sound artists are interested to come there, if we could do some residency and they would record things which we were not able to record, and there would be an archive, and we could make an event, an online event where composers from New Zealand to the Antarctica would play together with the sounds of the Szigetköz, I think it would be fun. I don't think it's realistic that I would go for the fourth point, which would be reducing disturbing sounds. That's out of my. I think I'm not able to, but I can make people aware of this. More people together with the locals. So this is my utopia. My course curriculum is not for the media, please.
Sure. I was just wondering that is there a future possibility of using Sziget as like the learning model for course curriculum, so that it will bring more attention and value into your educational systems, so you don't have to struggle with funding.
Yeah, I think it is. It's actually it was a very simple course curriculum because the students who took part were absolute beginners in this. So it really went from explaining who Murray Schafer was and from simple things. And I mean, what would be the course curriculum in this? If other universities would see it, or well, I think it's possible to promote and to find people. Actually, we are just two small things before we leave the session. One is that in November we are organizing a symposium in Budapest from the 21st to the 25th, which is called Beyond Listening. It will be a 4-day symposium. We will have Buddhaditya Chattopadhyay and Garcia Uzonian and Jacek Smolitsky and many PhD students and researchers and artists from not only the region, because we have Central European Network for Sonic Ecologies, but this time many more came from other countries and even other continents. Eric Leonardson will be there, for instance, and hopefully the new president Raquel Castro too, of the WFAE. So all these channels are possible to spread the news and give the information. And the other thing, we are just founding a Hungarian organization, which will be called Soundgarden Hungary, and this will be a Hungarian local ecoacoustic organization, which will also spread. So this is not the university level, but other levels, maybe that's the civilian level, to care about the issues. Actually, the Soundgarden event was open for the public, and civilians came too. So it was not just for locals and university students from Budapest, but people from the region came. If this was an answer to your question. Yes, thank you.
I think we have to move on now. I want to thank everybody for a rich and inspiring panel, and hope we all have a good evening. Thank you.